This is WCPO 9 News.
Thanks for joining us for WCPO 9 News. I'm Adrian Whitsett. Here's a look at some of today's top stories. An update about a shooting that injured a Covington police officer and another man after a traffic stop. Police say the officer is recovering at home with his family. Police are not releasing that officer's name nor the suspect's name right now. Kentucky State Police say a restaurant called 911 about 6:15 Monday night and said a man was waving a gun around and had just left in a vehicle. Covington police spotted it and stopped it on West 4th Street crossing into Newport. That's when police say the suspect shot at the officer and the officer fired back. The officer was hit in the arm. That suspect still in the hospital today, but expected to recover. In Indiana, the state Senate passed a proposal that would limit the governor's emergency powers. This bill would allow lawmakers to return for an emergency session and consider legislative action to a statewide emergency. It would also give lawmakers more control over federal stimulus funds. Governor Eric Holcomb has not said whether he will veto this, and no word when it will reach the House either. Fifth Third Bank is facing a big new legal threat. A federal judge just granted class action status to a 9-year-old lawsuit. Fifth Third Bank is accused of misleading customers over the interest rate they paid for cash advances between paychecks. The bank says it clearly disclosed the fee, $1 for every $10 borrowed, with an annual percentage rate of 120%. This case could cost the bank more than $280 million. According to court filings, people enrolled in the Early Access Loan Program from August 2011 to 2013 can pursue damages. Fifth Third says borrowers were aware of the fees and cannot comment on the pending litigation. Sherry.
Adrian, we're warm in the 70s today, but windy with winds gusting into the 30 and 40 mile an hour range later tonight. We're going to see rain moving in tonight as well. We'll have some scattered showers through the overnight and pushing out during the late morning tomorrow, but temperatures will be taking a hit. We're going to only see about 50 degrees or so. Likely as those temperatures falling during the day, we may not even get there in the 40s. And for opening day with the Reds, we're going to be lucky to get to 40 degrees. With the wind still in play that day, it'll feel like it's in the 20s.
What is something that you are looking forward to doing?
Jared Verkamp is not just playing a game of hot potato with these students at Taylor Elementary.
So I can make money to build a shelter.
He's looking for a deep conversation.
It does give them kind of a safe place where they feel comfortable sharing.
It's called a Peaceful Solutions Circle, hosted by the YWCA. For the past 3 years, the Restorative Practices program has been implemented at 3 elementary schools in the Northwest Local School District. Inside the circle, which is held virtually and in person, students are encouraged to share their feelings. The circle also serves as an alternative to normal disciplinary policies that would likely result in a trip to the principal's office.
Typically, it's a misunderstanding between the students, and through a 5-minute conversation, usually we're playing a game at the end, getting ourselves back into the classroom, whereas in the previous, they may be sitting in the office for a long period of time. It may be something that has led to the in-school detention or even a potential suspension.
So far, the district has held more than 5,000 circles and already this year served nearly 2,000 students. Taylor Elementary Principal Lori Reilly says the program is right in line with the social and emotional work her faculty is already doing with students.
Even in elementary school, if that's the pattern that you start with, not participating, not kind of taking ownership of your learning, your grades are failing, that's just going to continue along. Typically, you start to see some discipline issues, and then you get right into that pipeline to prison idea.
At Taylor, there's even a chill zone room where students can take a moment to think about their feelings and their actions.
From our morning announcements to the circles that we do, the conversations we have, we do emotional check-ins. So each day, everyone tells everyone how they're feeling and where they are. So we know how to follow up with a student.
Hoping that the follow-up will keep them focused on positive and peaceful interactions. In Colerain Township, Whitney Miller, WCPO 9 News.
Longtime Red season ticket holder Casey Green can't wait until opening day.
It's going to be like heaven. I think we're going to see a lot of people at the ballpark more excited and more pumped up than ever. There's going to be less people that are busy socializing and more into the game.
With Great American Ballpark capacity set at 30%, there will be roughly 12,000 fans. However, Reds President and Chief Operating Officer Phil Castellini still expects plenty of noise.
It's not going to feel like the 45,000 opening day normally feels like, but I can promise you, having sat through all of the 30 games last year, and if not for our grounds crew doing such a great job of making noise, so that 12,000 fans in Great American is going to sound like a roar, and certainly to our players, and I know they're looking forward to that energy.
That energy will accompany new health and safety measures across the ballpark. It will have plenty of signs emphasizing masks, social distancing, and hand washing.
You're going to see our people reminding you of all the safety protocols. And we're also trying to do as touchless as possible. So converting to all digital tickets, cashless. You won't see hawkers in the stands. When you come into the building, you'll see us, the stickers on the ground like you see in other points of retail today.
Stadium seats are assigned in pods of 2, 4, or 6 to allow for social distancing. That impacted season ticket holders whose seats often had to be relocated.
I was frankly thrilled that the seat location was still so darn good. I was worried that I'd get moved into a completely different section, and so no complaints at all. I don't know how they could have been more reasonable about giving us options.
Green is thrilled about returning. He has already envisioned what he might order while at the game.
I'm going to have at least one beer just to really enjoy the experience, and of course, got to have a dog or two on top of it.
Mike Dyer, WCPO 9 Sports.
President Joe Biden has unveiled his first list of judicial nominees. It contains 11 names, including some who would break new ground if confirmed. Among the nominees are 3 African-American women and 1 candidate who would become the first Muslim-American federal judge in American history. Biden's administration pledged early on to seek diversity in judicial nominees. 2 companies that teamed up on a COVID-19 vaccine are now promising to get more doses out to the public. Pfizer and BioNTech say they are now hoping to manufacture 2.5 billion doses of their vaccine by the end of this year. This as the U.S. continues its push to get people vaccinated. As of yesterday, more than 95 million people have received at least 1 dose. More than 52.5 million people are fully vaccinated. The CDC reports at full vaccination, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines were both 90% effective at preventing infection. The CDC is extending the order to halt some evictions through June. Many Americans are having trouble paying their rent because of the pandemic. The order, originally issued in September, has been extended twice already. The latest deadline was set to expire tomorrow. The CDC says evictions could hinder efforts to slow the spread of COVID-19, but landlords say the order puts the burden on property owners.
Several states have announced they're opening up vaccination eligibility for even more groups, but many across the country are still struggling to get an appointment. We wanted to know why. If vaccine allocations were based on population, states like Alaska are able to vaccinate everyone 16 and up, while others, like California, are still in the first phases of vaccine distribution.
I played by the rules this whole time. Where is my appointment?
Cancer left Kelly Malott immunocompromised and with lung and heart damage.
I mean, I'm in group 1B technically here, but they ran out of vaccines within 1A.
It has to be so frustrating.
I have done nothing for a year. And then before that, the prior 2 years in my life, I was in the middle of cancer treatment.
But not everyone is playing by the same rules as Malott. In Michigan, a nurse was arrested after police say she pocketed 2 syringes at a drive-in vaccination site.
They should put her under the jail. I hope they give her the maximum.
Not good. That's dangerous.
That's real bad.
That's dangerous.
I hope she get what she got coming.
A 73-year-old couple traveled from Kentucky to Ohio to get their shots. The hospital that administered it said, quote, UC Health will offer vaccines to patients who meet the Ohio Department of Health eligibility criteria, regardless of residence.
This overall vaccine program that we have in the United States, its goal is to get as many people vaccinated as possible.
We are seeing variability state to state, county to county. Where I live in Washington, D.C., we're seeing differences zip code to zip code. And so we really need a more uniform approach.
And then there's those left waiting. For example, people without internet in states like Arkansas, which require an online appointment.
Black, Latino, Native Americans, lower income workers have been hit the hardest. And we're seeing as vaccines are rolling out that many of these communities have the lowest vaccination rates.
Experts say the Biden administration's goal of making vaccines available for all adults in May could cut through confusing eligibility guidelines. As for Malat, she's trying to stay patient.
When do you think you'll get a COVID vaccine by?
That's hard to say. Right now, there doesn't feel like there's any movement.
Here in California, the changes to the eligibility list this week opened the vaccination process up to more than 4 million people, including those 16 and older with disabilities or underlying health conditions. Only about 10% of California's population is fully vaccinated.
For the second year in a row, the deadline to file federal income taxes has been extended due to the pandemic.
I'm not an expert, but we spoke with lots of them and asked, what does this extension mean for taxpayers?
The IRS extended the time not only for tax return filing for individuals, but also the time to pay that income tax on April 15th. You now have until May 17th.
But no need to worry. It's not expected to cause a delay in refunds.
I think that, the IRS is going to continue processing returns as quickly as they can.
It's important to note that the new deadline only applies to federal tax returns, not state ones. But some states have been given a little extra time.
Because of the recent winter storms, Louisiana citizens now have until June 15th, and also Texas and Oklahoma.
And the new deadline doesn't include quarterly tax payments for small businesses.
That deadline for small business owners is still April 15th.
COVID-19 can have many long-lasting symptoms like loss of smell. For one man, that loss could have cost him his career, but one doctor says there are ways to train your nose and smell again.
Leading up to coronavirus, you always hear all the stories about it.
Welcome to Chef Frank Bonanno's world.
Never thought that I would get coronavirus. I was super safe.
In the world of COVID, restaurants like Frank's have had to adapt. And Frank has had to adapt even more after contracting COVID and losing his sense of smell.
When I got it, that was actually the last thing on my mind, was losing my sense of taste and smell. And it didn't happen until about 3 days after my positive test that I actually lost them. And it was waking up one morning and being like, I don't taste this coffee. So then you realize, I don't smell this coffee.
Now, in the past, viruses have been shown to do that. So influenza virus, common cold, does do that for a subset of people. But this was a large percent of the symptomatic people in COVID.
Fortunately, Frank didn't suffer from many other symptoms, but when he was able to get back to work, he had to adapt.
Fortunately, if I cook something, I have several people always standing around to say, does this taste okay? Usually the question is, yeah, it needs salt. But, it was just very strange, but I wasn't worried, and I was probably more grateful that I really didn't get very sick.
Why we lose the sense of smell likely is because it changes the olfactory sensory neurons that detect the odors. There must be an inflammatory response there.
Dr. Diego Restrepo is a neuroscientist researching the loss of smell due to COVID.
One problem with the nose, with olfaction, is that is the one direct route to the brain. And so one could get an infection of the brain. It seems like it does not happen with COVID. Likely it doesn't happen because you lose your sense of smell. That's something that we're studying right now.
In essence, losing your sense of smell may actually be protecting you from other damage from the virus. But Restrepo says there are techniques for those like Frank to regain your sense of smell by training your nose.
Yeah, Dr. Thomas Hummel, he's an otolaryngologist in Germany. He developed smell training. And what it is you can do it at home. You basically have different smells to smell each day. And there's a subset of people that actually benefit from that. And so that's done, it's useful.
That's what Frank did.
Yeah, I ate my fair share, like 3 or 4 times, of eating the burnt oranges with salt and sugar on them.
And while he does have his sense of smell back now, he realizes there are many who don't. but they'll get it back soon.
That short temporary loss of taste and smell is probably not the worst thing in the world to happen with what was going on.
I'm Thomas Hoppo reporting.
The pandemic changed a lot about life, including how we date, and matchmaker Susan Trombetti says some of those changes aren't going away anytime soon. Right now, people are in the process of getting vaccinated, and the country is in different stages of opening back up. That means having some tough conversations about things like masking and social distancing.
Before you let this person in, you're going to gauge your alignment on safety protocol, and you're going to make sure that it aligns with yours, both of you. You're going to gauge whatever that is, gauge your risk, and decide from there.
Trombetti says pre-pandemic, many people went from quickly swiping right or left to weeding people out through virtual dates during COVID, and she predicts those dates are here to stay.
How many times have you shown up on a date and your date doesn't look like their photo? So now we're all comfortable and familiar with the technology so that we can get a glimpse ahead of time before we waste our time.
Trombetti says the most important lesson the pandemic has taught us about meeting people is to date authentically.
People used to want to date what looked great on paper, but now they realize someone that has your back in an emergency, someone that you could be locked on a deserted island with and stay with, is what's really important.
Keep it simple and lead with your heart.
Hello everyone, I'm 9 First Warning meteorologist Sherry Hughes. A windy day for us with southwest winds gusting into the 20s, 30s, and even maybe 40-mile-an-hour range as the cold front comes our way. But prior to that, temperatures are in the lower 70s across the entire tri-state. Rain moves in later tonight, maybe by about 11 or so. Through the overnight hours, it's a cold front and will likely pick up a half an inch to an inch of rain across the entire tri-state. That rain will move out, but temperatures will be taking quite a bit of a hit. In fact, we'll clear things out late in the day, still have some breezy conditions, and again, falling temperatures. We're at 45 degrees with that rain likely heavy at times overnight. Then tomorrow we're at 50, morning rain, and again, temperatures will be suffering because of the falling temperatures and a breeze out there giving us a wind chill. First opening day for the Reds, temperatures only near 40 with the wind still in play, feeling like it's in the 20s. But we're warming up as we head into Easter weekend.
This year, millions of women in this country will suffer from some form of hair loss, and African American women often have a harder time finding wigs that match their own hair. Empty chairs at salons across the country filled up fast once lockdowns were lifted. Patricia Wixon saw it firsthand.
It is a normalcy thing that all women will talk about it who come in.
For 30 years, she's been a hair replacement specialist. This year, though, she has noticed more women dealing with hair loss. Some of it, she says, is just from the stress of the pandemic.
No one knows what to do. They're really terrified because they don't know where it will stop, the shedding, how it will continue. It's stressful.
About 30 million women in this country are dealing with some kind of hair loss. Some of it is from the pressures of COVID. Other times, though, it's from chemotherapy.
For a woman, there's always a second look. It's not as acceptable.
Many of the women who Patricia treats are black, and until recently, they didn't have a lot of options when it came to wigs that weren't made for white women.
Why can't I have hair like my own hair?
It's just a devastating process to lose your hair.
That's where Diane Austin and her sister Pamela Shattuck come in.
1 in 3 Black women in particular will be diagnosed with cancer, any type of cancer in their lifetime.
They are the founders of Coils to Locks. A few years ago, facing a cancer diagnosis herself, Diane realized there weren't any wigs being made specifically for Black women.
I think it's definitely an unconscious bias and sort of a lack of understanding that there's a different market out there.
So these two sisters started making wigs themselves, ethnically inspired wigs, curly, natural hair. The wigs are now being sold in hospitals all over the country, most covered by insurance.
You want to look in the mirror and just feel like you have some control over all of these physical changes that are happening.
In the last 20 years, despite a universal drop in mortality rates, there's been a rise in the number of African American women with breast cancer, at an almost 42% higher rate than that of white women, making these wigs all the more important.
There are patients who oftentimes will not take chemotherapy because they're afraid of losing their hair.
As for Patricia Wixon, she no longer must alter wigs for her black clients. Instead, they now have dozens of natural choices to pick from.
You're just not hung up and held back by some of the things that you were held back on. And so women are thinking, this is who I am. This is who I want to be.
Helping women feel beautiful both inside and out, one hairdo at a time. I'm Chris Conti.
Don't underestimate kids, because we're doing it right now and we're making a difference in our communities.
A group of 5th graders in Kentucky are proving there's no age requirement when it comes to doing good. They came up with the idea to create care packages to deliver to patients of all ages at their local hospital.
It comes with a message from our team, a coloring book, an activity book. We have a stress ball, 2 sharpened pencils, and a pack of crayons.
Since November, they have delivered more than 160 packages.
As a Cub Scout, we like to help others.
This 9-year-old Cub Scout in Michigan started a project to help foster kids. It's a cause close to his heart since he was a foster child once. During his free time, he stocks boxes with necessities for foster kids like blankets, clothes, stuffed animals, and more. Who doesn't love a great deal? And for one high school student in Ohio, bargain hunting has become a way to help people in need during the pandemic. She's using the art of couponing as a way to give back to shelters.
Really happy that it's going to a good use, and I'm glad that people are happy that I'm doing it.
Over the last month, the teen has purchased more than $700 worth of toiletries, beauty products, and other items, all for free, thanks to the coupons and rebates she used. And she's giving it back to people who need it the most.
It's just been a tough year, and I think people like her are kind of a shining light for us.